another thing too, I took personal. He's from New York. I'm from Boston. Now I don't know you understand. Right, Boston and New York, we have this weird rival beef about the Yankees and the Red Sox. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first thing I told that dude is Yankees suck. You come to my town and you think you gonna beat me in my town? Get the fuck out of here, bro. I'm sorry, I'm a Bostonian to the heart. Ain't no Yankee gonna come here and beat me. He came with a Yankees hat. I'm like, yeah, okay. No,
It's over, right?
there was no way. I didn't care about the hype train and everything. I made that fight personal.
When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock and roll tour. When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock and roll tour.
Hey, Tyler.
What's up, Piet?
What's going on? Welcome to the New Score Podcast. My name is Pat. This is my co-host, TYG, Tyler Pratt. This is episode 33 of the New Score Podcast. Very special episode. Today, we will be interviewing professional MMA fighter John Doomsday Howard, joining us very shortly. This is something we've been stoked about all week. I mean, to be able to sit down with a professional athlete and to get the perspective of somebody that was there fighting in a UFC octagon and has fought MMA professionally for as long as he did. It's going to be spectacular interview. Can't wait to dive into it with him. Tyler, I'm juiced up for this.
No, I can't wait. I mean, again, it's one thing to, sit down with a professional athlete, but one that's been as successful as John has, and then to have that longevity that he has. I mean, a career of about 20 years and, to still kind of be going, and we'll cover all that soon. But yeah, it's just incredible what he's been able to do.
For sure. Tyler, I got nothing else. Let's get into this. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we give you John Doomsday Howard. Joining us now, we have a very special guest, professional MMA fighter, John Doomsday Howard. John, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the New Score Podcast. How we doing?
Doing good, man. Just living life, surviving. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure's all ours. Like I said, this is an honor for us. First of all, out of Boston, congratulations to your Boston Celtics on yet again another championship. I got to ask, first question, John. Do you guys up there ever feel like assholes for the amount of championships you won these last 24 years?
Nope. We're number one. Boston's number one. Nope. As a matter of fact, I do one better, right? Not only that, we're the leading of all championships for the NBA with 18 right now. We beating the Lakers, so we're number one. So yeah, we never
Title
get
town.
tired of it though. City of champions.
For sure. Title town. All right. Well, getting into this, just kind of going through your story, John. We also have some other questions for you. First thing I came across, I found an interview where you were talking to the press and you had spoken publicly about how you had been diagnosed with autism. What was it, like 2015, 2016?
Around there, yep.
Right. So you come out publicly talking about how you've been diagnosed with autism. You've also spoken publicly about how you had a speech impediment and how that was an issue when you were a child. And you were just talking about, hey, I didn't let this stop me. And I do this for those kids that are out there. And, you know, they need that voice. They need to see that person that made it with dealing with stuff that they deal with. And that was a huge inspiration to me. I gained massive amounts of respect for you right off the bat, seeing that interview.
Absolutely.
And that was great to see. That
Thank you, man.
Your purpose is extraordinary. So diving into that, let's talk about your childhood. You've spoken about having a hard childhood, Dorchester, Boston.
Yep.
You're talking about, you know, times were just hard as a kid, getting into fights. Talk to me about what that childhood, we see it all the time. Professional athletes, a lot of them, they came up from that. You know what I mean? Like, and they were just, times were so hard as a kid, and it molded them into being, it's like, listen, you gotta work your ass off to get out of this. And talk to me about that. Talk to me about your childhood.
My childhood, man, was as hard up a grand. I have single mother. You know, she was a powerful mom. She really did a really good job of all the things she could do, man. And yeah, I came from a neighborhood called Dorchester in Boston. And if y'all don't know what Dorchester is, Dorchester in Boston is one of the most dangerous neighborhoods, especially at the time in the '80s when I was growing up, around there. As a matter of fact, it beat South Central in LA. One year, it was named the most dangerous city or town. One year, nothing to be proud of, but it's to let you know how crazy it was. It was hard, man. I had some struggles, some fights, some survivor stuff, some other stuff I don't want to say too much about. But yeah, man, I feel I was real fortunate to survive that and still be here to talk to y'all. You know, and I was also fortunate to have an outlet from fighting. I mean, I'm not really a troublemaker. I just come from a rough neighborhood. I mean, I come from a neighborhood where, someone stepped to you, had to fight. I come from a neighborhood where if I went to my mother and say, "Hey, this person hit me in my face," and didn't fight back, she'd beat me up. So that kind of explains why, I kind of fell into the whole fighting career and stuff like that. But before that, man, just coming up being an average kid, man, it was a lot challenging. I was the older sibling. I'm the oldest. I have a younger sister. I was the older one, so she was my responsibility too. So it was a lot of stuff, man, coming up. And it was funny, man. That I always knew all before being finally diagnosed, there was something different about me. And come to find out, man, yeah, the whole time, I was on autistic or on the spectrum. More and more, I learned about it. More I talk to people about it. I try to explain autism is a spectrum. Okay, there's so many different spectrums of it, and I'm just on the spectrum. How deep I am, and it's a little different. I had a lot of difficulties like talking. I had a speech impediment, and you can see like my stuttering right now. I mean, I'm getting better at it. I mean, I've been getting better at it. But yeah, man, I had like issues doing that. A social situations. It was weird social cues. I had to learn a lot of stuff. I had to learn, and I get this question like, how being autistic was able to be a fight. Well, being autistic, there's a lot. It was an outlet for me. It was, I could do something aggressive and not get in trouble for it. I got into some fights in the neighborhood, and I never start any fights. I'm not a starter, but I am a finisher. And because I come from a rough neighborhood, someone jump in your face, you gotta jump back. Even if you lose, you still gotta fight. So that happened. So like fighting was kind of not pushed down my throat, but it was pushed on me where I had no choice. And what people don't understand is it's like I could be honest now. Now I'm being 40 something years old. Fighting is one of my biggest fears, man. Two biggest fears in my life: fighting and swimming. I, I still it's still two of my biggest fear. But yeah, man. And because I necessarily didn't like it, not well, yeah, hate, especially at that time because a lot of times I was getting jumped. Now people running around the way and told us they didn't fight you up and up, you got jumped a lot. But I was able to still survive, hit back. And I used to hate it so much. I used to hate to do it. That I had to do it. But once I learned what fighting was and the science of it, it made it easy to deal with. And something I hate, I fell in love with. So I mean, there's still certain things, especially like fighting. Like I don't want to just go out there and fight unless I'm getting paid for it. Or I'm in the cage. But like in the street
Mhm.
fight, I just don't want to go to a street fight. But yeah, it was challenging, but also helpful.
Your mother had a quote for you, and she said, "I know you think it's impossible, but it's only improbable," and that
Yep.
stuck with me. And that's your mother sounds like she was a just a great inspiration on you.
She was a great inspiration. Actually, my mom, she looked out for me, man. What I mean by that is, she's a mom. I think she knew something about me. I wasn't like, I hate to say it like this, normal, if that's the way to say it. And it's funny,
Yeah.
she kind of practiced with me a lot of stuff, a lot of challenges was happening, and she kind of noticed this. I mean, we couldn't put nothing with it. That we because at that time, growing up, there was no autism. There was no way to test for it and all that. It was either
Mhm.
use fully that or not the spectrum of it. But because of that, she always give me like challenges and always help me, to see life in a different lens, in a different way. And I really appreciate that. But yeah, she always said that to me. She's like, nothing's impossible, it's improbable. And that always sticks to me in life, no matter what the situation is, if negative or positive. I just always have that quote for me because it puts a real situation like, like it might seem like it can't be done, but there is a possible way. You just got to find it. And because of that attitude, a lot of struggles I had through life, I was able to get through. I mean, my MMA career was crazy. Me being a father, me being successful, me even being alive. Now from Boston and Dorchester and being alive and still I can speak to you. A lot of my friends I grew up with not here because of lifestyle and environment. So I mean, she was a great inspiration. She's not with us no more. She died last year. Crazy, man. I'm still dealing with that, man. It does hurt every day. I still find myself breaking down and crying, missing her. But yeah, man. But she kept me strong, and honestly, how strong she was, she even prepared me when she was gonna go away. So that's why even though it was hard, she prepared me for the day she was gonna die. She knew, well, she always knew she was gonna die before me. That was our plan. We didn't think it was already because it was a surprise. The whole situation where she died, she was only like she wasn't even 60. She was 59 years old. She fell and hit her head, and because she fell and hit her head, it was other complications that led to that. Then she died. So it was crazy. But she always prepared me for the situation. So like I'm really honored and grateful that I had her in my life.
She sounds like she was an amazing woman, and we're very sorry
She
for your loss.
she was.
There's love, but there's really nothing like, the mother's love, right? There's just something about it.
Yeah.
It just it's different. So, my condolences, brother. I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you, man. It's been different, man. I can be honest right here, man. Right, this is the first interview me not doing an interview with her, and I gotta laugh myself because she's one of the people that taught me how to do an interview. Because I know a lot of people used to say all the time, "Oh, you don't seem like autistic and all this. You seem like pretty like yeah." It's because I had a good mother, I had good training. She used to randomly just come up to me with a fake microphone and hey, Mr. Howard, what do you do with this? And we just do random interval. But she did that, especially when I got into my fighting career, to teach me how to be ready for this. So like this is the first time me doing it, and I'm really preparing. But because of her, I'm able to do this, and because of her, I'm able to have a conversation and not be so awkward, or like, I think it's the best way to put it in this situation. So it was, I miss her, man, but she made me the person I am today.
I love
Absolutely.
that. She's definitely with us right now. You grew up playing football, basketball, and then
Yep.
you trained to be an electrician right around the
Yep.
end of high school. Just tell me about that. Like, what was your when you were getting out of high school? You had played football, you played basketball. Like, did it not work out there? And you started training to be an electrician. Like, what was your mindset at that point? Like, what you wanted to do with your life?
So when I started playing football, man, as a freshman, I made varsity, which a lot of people who know who play football, a lot of time when you're a freshman, you're on junior varsity, and you really have to be talented to make varsity. Well, I made varsity my freshman year, and since then I was playing football. I play a little basketball. I can play basketball, but I suck. I'm better than football than basketball, 100%. Um, what football did for me, man, it was because football is really physical, and I love that. That gave me an outlet to really stay, to have some kind of focus, and have something to do, and have something to look forward to, and it just made me the person. It made me a stronger person, and it made me more confident. I definitely growing up, I didn't have confidence, man, but through sports and attributes like this, it made me to a better person, man. And from there, I didn't. I wanted to be a football player, but I wanted. It's not that I have the grades. It's just I'm coming. I came from a single mother home, and it came to a point where I had to choose either work to help my mother with the bills or play football. I tried to do both. Both wasn't happening, but because she's a single mother, she needed help. I had to go more to work. So that's why like football wasn't like really the choice for me for being a professional athlete in football. Um, but when that happened, man, it just she also that taught me responsibility and what life really was at a young age. I think my mother really forced me. I don't want to say forced. I think she opened the door for me to manhood a little early, but it's appreciated because I think she knew I needed that, and it made me the person I am today. It made me the responsible person I am today for sure.
When did you start going to train in the gym, and when did fighting, like mixed martial arts, become a thing? You would obviously you said you got in fights when you were a kid, but when did you decide that you wanted to do that?
Well, this is what happened, man. High school was like a different situation. I told you I was working 24/7. And me and my mother sat down, had a talk, and I was like, "Listen, working is starting to get into school. I want to get my high school diploma." She agreed. So what happened is I went to Job Corps, and when I went to Job Corps, I went down there to get my high school diploma and become an electrician, right? And it's funny because I went to Job Corps to do that, and that's actually when I discovered fighting. I discovered which no freestyle submission grappling. Met this guy named James Stokes. He was a awesome grappler. Whipped my ass almost all the time. But he taught me jujitsu. He taught me MMA. He taught me the basis of it. And then it's funny. I love this. I loved it so much. Where people used to tease me, "Oh, you think you're gonna go to UFC or something?" Because UFC wasn't big. It wasn't even a thing. I said, "I think I can, man. I love this." And even though I went to Job Corps to be something else, electrician, which I did be. I did graduate with my high school diploma. I had this new thing I never heard of, got introduced to it, and I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with it from there, man. I started training and giving more confidence. I graduated Job Corps, had my electrician's A and B apprenticeship. Then from there, I was being an electrician and training MMA, and a year later started fighting.
So what was that process like of getting the call, getting into UFC?
Oh man, it was crazy, man. It was years and years of traveling, fighting, and local promotions, trying to get discovered. Try to get my name out there. It was it was a road that seemed like that wasn't going to end well. It was funny. I believe I was 25, about to be 26, and it was a conversation I had with my mom. It was like, listen, if I don't get in the UFC by the time I'm 25, 26, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna do something else. Well, what happened when I had that conversation? At that time, I've been fighting MMA for 5, 6 years, and shout out to Chris Ponchris and Joe Lazon. They're the ones that got me in the UFC. I got a phone call from Chris Ponchris, who used to be Joe Lazon's manager. Shout out to Joe Lazon again. And say, hey, listen, what you doing for UFC 94? BJ Penn versus GSP. I said, just watching it. He's like, you want to watch it live? I was like, sure. He's like, how about that? How about you be on the card? I was like, get the hell out of here. And then they got me in the UFC, man. And
That's
that
amazing.
phone call, I can't tell you, that's the best, one of the best phone calls ever, man. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe I was in the UFC, and I can't believe I got invited. I can't believe I was on one of the biggest cards ever. That was my first UFC fight, man, and that was one of the best moments of life, man. I had the fight in the UFC, and then on that fight, I got fight of the night. That one fight changed my life. Let me tell you the real story. I won't tell the story a lot. UFC didn't pay well back in the day. Actually, that first UFC fight, it was like three. It was like 3-3. It was 3,000 to show, 3,000 to win. So I was like, and at that time, I fought in other promotions that got paid way more money. So here I'm in the UFC. Yeah, I'm in UFC. I saw the paycheck. I was like, what the hell is this? So I was looking at my coaches. I was like, I'm glad to be a UFC fighter. I could go to work, man. This ain't nothing. Well, what happened was, shout out to Dana White. He granted me Friday night. When he granted me the Friday night, they changed my whole life. I was able to train 24/7 and become a full-fledged UFC fighter, man. That was one of the if not the greatest experience of my life ever. To get to fight the UFC, to fight a fight. I fought Chris Wilson in that fight a fight, win, and then after winning, get in the fight of the night. That changed my life. Literally, that one fight changed the whole course of my life. If I didn't get fight of the night, I don't know if I would still been in the UFC.
That's an amazing story. My
That
next
is
question,
crazy.
actually, you brought him up. What was your first impression of Dana White?
Very smart businessman. That's the best way I can say. I don't like to throw negativity at nobody. Very smart businessman. People understand. Like, do I agree with everything he does? Of course not. I still have my things, and I don't want to say something because there's ongoing stuff. But a very smart businessman, and people understand when you're in his position. You know, it's a two-way street. Like I said, I don't agree with everything he does, but in person, he's a great person. Let me tell you something. So I want to bring this up. For y'all who don't know, my daughter was a victim of gun violence. Not that long ago, she got shot in the head, survived. Thank God she's still here. And the person who called me was Dana White. He gave me a phone call, man. He was like, "Hey, man," and it was weird because we didn't talk about none of my fights. We literally talked about it was two fathers exchanging how we felt in the situation. And he gave me his condolences. He said anything I needed, he would do. And dude, he gave me his number. And I mean, he's a busy man. I don't get to contact as much, but he did take time out of his day to call me and say, "I'm so sorry, man. Anything you need, I'm here." And that's the type of man he is. Like you understand, he's a businessman and he does businessman stuff. And knows everybody's not gonna agree, but when it comes to one-on-one and reaching out, he does that. He didn't have to do that for me. And trust me, it's weird as this gonna sound. That actually made my day to have Dana White call my phone and talk about my daughter and wish me luck and then give me praise. That was that right there because I had enough because that's the first time we really connected on a personal level and we got to talk about our kids, which put us in a whole different spectrum, if that makes sense. When we talk about business, it was back and forth. I don't want to get into that. We had some disagreements, but when it came to that being a family man, he supported me and I appreciate that.
Wow. So you start out 4-0 in the UFC. You just on a complete roll. On a complete roll, 4-0 in the UFC. I have a couple general questions for you. Something
Go
I
for it.
think about when I'm watching UFC, when I'm watching like fight night on Saturdays, and I see the camera going around the octagon before the fight, and they're showing the fighters. Something that comes to my mind all the time is like, what is that dude feeling right now? Like, what is going through that dude's head right now? when you're in that moment and your name's getting introduced, John, Doomsday, Howard, what are the feelings in your body? And like, what are you just blacked out, or like, what are you thinking about?
I'm like, holy shit, this is real. Bruce Buffer just said my name.
Yeah.
It's freaking unreal. It's This is the best way I can explain it. It's exciting, it's nervous, but you it just happens. You go for it. It's like losing your virginity to the hardest girl you ever wanted in your life, and it happening. But now you're gonna do it in front of everybody, and now you have performance anxiety. You know you could do it. You know you have the passion. You've been waiting for this, but now you just hope you could deliver. That's the best way to explain it. That was that feeling. Walking down everything. It was just like it was just you know what you got to do. You know we have to do it, but now we have all these eyes watching. You're like, oh my god, I can't believe this real. And you're kind of focused, but it was still one of the greatest experiences of my life to be in that cage for the first time, to look around, to find out that and I'm not that I'm a short guy, but I'm not the tallest guy. To go in the UFC cage and look over and you find out you're taller in the cage, like, oh, no one of these guys look huge. It's not that big. It was a certain reality checks what you see on TV, what you see are real. But when you saw it real and see like what how TV displays stuff and what's real, I got comfortable, right? The most comfortable, the reason why I think I did so well, right? When I go in foreign places, I try to find a comfort zone. Believe it or not, my comfort zone in that fight was the lights. Because even though before the fight, they use all these lights and everything, but the exact same lights I fought in Club Lidos and other venues is the exact same lights UFC uses. So when the lights came on, it's a certain tintness and brightness to it. But when I felt it, I was like, oh, this is very familiar. Oh my God, it's the same light. And you see my face change from being nervous to, oh, I'm home. And it just happened.
So unfortunately, you get those 4 wins. You lose 3 in a row, 2 of them controversial. One of them, the doctor's stoppage. One of
Yeah.
them controversial. What you get released from the UFC? Like, what is that feeling like? Like, were you how pissed off were you? What was the feeling of that when UFC released you?
I was mad, but I was also motivated. Motivated to do better. That's the best way to explain it. Not. I mean, of course, you have the up and downs. Do you quit? Do you do this? But it was just it gave me a weird motivation because if I really was serious about it, I want to be a top tier. I don't want to be just to be in the UFC. I want to be a UFC fighter who wins and does well. So that kind of motivated me, especially when I was told that I have a chance to come back. The UFC does dump you, but the UFC is honest. They let you know if you can come back or not. If you perform well, they'll promise it, and that's what they did. They eventually brought me back, but it just puts you in a weird headspace, and you have to make a decision. Like either you crawl back in your little hole and say, I did what I did, I tried," or you go back to the drawing board and try again. And that's what I did. I went back to the drawing board and just tried again. And honestly, I think it made me a better fighter because it humbled me, but also it made me work harder and improve even more.
I was gonna say, does that change how like your fighting style? Knowing like fight to fight, you could be out, and whether you get invited back to get another fight, does that change your fighting style? Especially trying like fight to fight to get fight of the night after getting that on your first fight of your career.
Sometimes it does. I gotta admit, I found myself trying to change my fighting style to be more oppressive and everything, but you change your fighting style not necessarily for the fans, but for yourself. You change to better yourself. The best example is I'm gonna look at GSP. GSP is a perfect example of that. I don't know if y'all remember the first time he found out he got armbarred and he saw it a mile away. And instead of like
Mhm.
submit and beat himself up, he just went back to the drawing board and saw what he needed to prove and improved it. Same thing. I just seen it where I need to improve. I not necessarily fight my fighting style. I just try to improve it to cater to the UFC and to basically win, if that makes more sense.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I try to improve myself to be on the next level. To like listen, if I want to be the best in the world or be on the best platform, I need to be able to beat these guys. So all that really happened is just make me improve with the areas I was weak at and made me better.
Right, and you went on to fight smaller promotions for a couple years and dominated, defended the middleweight title 4 separate times, and then sure enough, you get that call. You get that call when they're coming to your hometown, Boston. What was that phone call like?
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. There was I got real fortunate for that phone call, and they called me and they want me to fight Uriah Hall in Boston, and it was funny because right, you have two phone calls. You have a phone call, the professional phone call when it's a rap, you do the contracts. Then you have the phone call where they tell you your expectations. They didn't think I was going to win. I mean, UFC is brutally honest sometimes. I mean, and I appreciate that because they're the UFC. They was like, we figure you do well, and if you do well or if you win, we'll bring you back full time. But they kind of told me like, we don't really expect you to. Okay, but we do appreciate you taking a fight, and if you give a good showing, maybe give you a second chance. Well, they hold their word. I came in into a situation knowing that they didn't expect me to win. I won, and when I won, especially unexpectedly, they gave me a new contract. So that's the one thing I do appreciate. UFC is sometimes brutally honest, but you need that sometimes because when you're honest, that when they told me they didn't expect me to do but so well, that motivated me to well to do even better. And because they told me that, I think that's why I won because they didn't expect it, so I did it anyway. But when they did that, they hold their word. When they say, "Listen, if you do X, Y, or Z, we'll do our part," and they did. So I do appreciate that. Even though it comes up harsh sometimes, but
Mhm.
sometimes, especially in the sport, you need that harshness. You need that reality check, and that reality check was at first I didn't like it. I was like, wow, they really think I suck or something. But now it just motivated me to be better, to prove to them that I'm still John Doomsday Howard. And when I came back and did it, they held their word.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Sometimes you can take that one way or you can take it the other way, right? You can either
Yeah.
take it out of left field, you can take it and use it as motivation, which is what you did. Now, against Uriah Hall, which I think is one of the more popular names that you fought, especially going into that, I think at the time he was considered one of the golden boys,
Yep.
right, of the UFC. So going into that fight, was that one of the more like, I don't want to say nervous feelings going into a fight, knowing the popularity of the guy you're going up against, knowing like, okay, he's held to one of these higher standards, and then you get the call and you're like, hey, we don't expect you to win the fight. Like, I don't know. I just feel like that mindset going in, that's got to be like a different feeling, something different than your
Oh,
day to day feeling, right?
yeah. No, I'm gonna be real with you, man. Two things. One, I told you right Hall straight up, you're a hype train, bro. I said, first of all, I've been fighting. I've been in UFC longer. Yeah, that bring me back. But I've been in UFC longer. Yes, you're more popular, but I've been here longer, and I've been around the world in a circle longer than you. So that being said, I didn't feel no pressure. I straight told them I don't feel no pressure. They're putting all the pressure on you. And two, they're acting like I haven't been here, like I don't know what I'm doing. And because I was confident in my ability, the hype train and everything, I didn't care about. And another thing too, I took personal. He's from New York. I'm from Boston. Now I don't know you understand. All right, Boston and New York, we have this weird rival beef about the Yankees and the Red Sox. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
first thing I told that dude is Yankees suck. You come to my town and you think you gonna beat me in my town? Get the fuck out of here, bro. I'm sorry, I'm a Bostonian to the heart. Ain't no Yankee gonna come here and beat me. He came with a Yankees hat. I'm like, yeah, okay. No,
It's over, right?
there was no way. I didn't care about the hype train and everything. I made that fight personal, and because I made it personal, and because it made me, you're right, you're cool. It wasn't like no beef. It was just like sports beef, and
Right.
because of that, yeah, I wasn't. None of that I wasn't worried about it. Of course, he's good. I mean, he's one of some of the best knockouts ever. But I do too, and I felt to him, hey, listen, I've been in the trenches. I didn't think he'd been in the trenches long enough to be fighting a seasoned veteran. When I was like, yeah, you've been here, but you don't understand what I understand. You don't know the struggles I went through. It was harder for me to get in UFC. You knocked someone on TV and get all this popularity. And you understand the popularity I had to get, I had to earn. It wasn't like I was on the show, like, oh my God. It was years and years and years to even to get to the level of success I did. He got a shortcut. So when I saw him, I had a conversation. I was straight honest with him. I was like, listen, not that I'm not nervous, but I've been here. I'm ready. I hope you are. That was my
Love
attitude.
that. Love that. That's respect right there.
And just out of context, John was a plus 365 underdog in
Yeah.
that fight. I would have been all over you that night. I would have been all over you if I was
100%.
old enough to bet back then. I'll tell you that. But something I want to mention and then ask, because you had replaced somebody to fight him, and then that happens. We see it all the time in the UFC where guys will get replaced late. I know you've been that guy that you've replaced, and then you've
Yep.
also been scheduled to fight somebody, and then you're fighting somebody else. And sometimes we
Yep.
see it, it's like the little day or day before or week, whatever. And to me, because we're big football guys on this podcast, to me, I always think like if a quarterback goes down, the analogy I like to use is back like 2012, I think it was, 49ers, Alex Smith gets hurt, Colin Kaepernick comes in, and you have all these defenses just having to adjust on the fly. And he just put the league on notice like that, tearing the whole league
Yep.
up, takes them to the Super Bowl. And it's like these defenses don't know what's prepared. Like they don't know what to prepare for. They haven't seen this before. Is
Yep.
it like that at all in fighting? Is there
It's
like a
just
sense of like you need to know about somebody?
it's not the need to know. It's just what happens. It's just let me give you the science. When you train for somebody specifically for like I don't know, the average camp is about 4 to 6 weeks. No, actually, I'm gonna say 6 weeks, 6 to like 7 weeks. Well, for me anyway. When you train 5 of those weeks for that one person, same thing. You sprawl this way, you do this. You don't throw the cross the way you throw overhand instead of like when you train for that for weeks. It's not that your muscle memory is there. That's what you're training. But when you switch on the fly and a week later you find out you're fighting a whole different guy that messed with you because this whole time you've been training this way, and now all this stuff that was working for this guy might not work for this guy. Here's the best example. You might have been fighting a world class jiu-jitsu player, and you're like, oh, jiu-jitsu defense. Then you switch up fighting a world class striker, and you're like, you know what? Maybe I need to go back to jiu-jitsu. So you change your whole game. So and that's what I knew about the fight with Uriah. I was like, I know, like, listen, changing an opponent, especially at this pace and with this much pressure, is hard. I've been in that situation, so I know. I'm not sure how many times he's been in that situation at that specific time, but I was confident because he wasn't used to that, and this is the first time that happened to him in the UFC. I knew I could take advantage of it, and that's what I did because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like how talented you are. If you're training your body from one specific person, but at the last of every minute or like a day or a few hours is a whole different person. Now you're gonna basically tell your body, okay, all this stuff you've been doing, don't do it now because it's not working. This guy, do this instead. Unless you're seasoned, that's very hard to do, and even the seasoned fighters, that's hard to do.
Like, do you have like film sessions like you'll see it
Oh
in
yeah,
football? Another example, like where you're just sitting down and you're dissecting like what this guy does here, what this guy does what this guy does there. If I do this
oh
here,
yeah.
what's he gonna do?
Oh yeah, let me tell you something. Not only they do that, UFC is really smart. UFC sends you the videos of your opponent. Back in the day, I'm not sure they do that now, but back in the day, yeah, they send you all the information. If you requested, hey, listen, I like to, would you like, sure. They used to send you a CD. That's how old I am. Wow, a CD, a DVD. They used
No
to send you,
shit.
yeah, they used to send you a DVD, right? And there was a special marking. You couldn't share it, or if you get caught sharing, you could get in trouble. But yeah, from they want a good fight. Well, at least back then, they want you to have a good situation, and they send you the information. I don't know if they do it anymore, but yeah, they if you ask them for information and they can help, they do it. Because I'm pretty sure he was watching me, any information to send me, and vice versa. But yeah, you definitely on this level, you study every movement, every time he flinches, every time he backs up. What does he do when he gets kicked? What does he do with every little thing? Just like we watch how like an NFL coach will watch past games. Same thing with this. You study every little situation, and that's what it is. Imagine doing that for 5 weeks. You study this guy's tape, you study the guy's movement, you set it up. Then all of a sudden, all the information you studied, you got ready for, got switched to a whole new guy. And then if you only got a week or 2 weeks, how much can you really learn and adjust to this new guy you fighting? That plays a lot. People don't understand. People think fighting is just like, oh, you just fight a whole new guy. No, it's a strategy, there's a system. So thing you guys change a whole new guy. Even though I can feel I could beat that guy, yeah, I think I could beat certain guys only if I prepare them for certain right. If I don't prepare for certain guys, I'm not beating them, and that's the fight science. If you don't have the right preparation, it doesn't matter. You're better. You need to be not only better but also be prepared for that situation. And so it's hard to do that on the whim.
Tyler, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I even forgot what I was going to ask. I was just taking all that in. That's good stuff. I mean, I guess like with that being said, right? Do you feel when you're the guy replacing someone who's hurt, and if you're the guy who's facing someone who was replaced, do you feel like they're one from one perspective or the other? Is there an advantage or a disadvantage to that? Like, if you're in the shoes of the guy who's being replaced, do you feel like you have an advantage, right? Because you have a little motivation. Most of the time, I feel like when that happens, it if you're replacing an injured fighter, you might be lower ranked,
Yep.
right? Like so I guess with that being said, do you feel like you have an advantage if you're replacing someone who's injured?
Sometimes, yeah. Depends who the situation of the fight is, and depending the timing. When I got replaced, and knowing details like how long he been training for a opponent. If I know my opponent's been training for fight a world class grappler, just learning how to sprawl and everything. Okay, I know 100%. That's his natural reaction. So when I go to do like a fake shot, or I go to touch his hips because they've been trained that, and you can't really overturn muscle memory. I use that to my advantage. It's a whole lot of strategy. People think fighting is just this thing you just go in there and just, I'm just this badass, and I'm just no. Especially with me, no, it's the whole strategy. So sometimes it comes into play. Hey, listen, you're supposed to fight this guy. This guy's a world class grappler. What we could do, we could start a world class and change it up. So like be in that situation, you can actually use it to advantage. And I done that in some of my career. Yeah, when I was been a guy, and I know 100%. This guy has one style, and you've been paying for this one style, but now I have an attribute that guy can't have. I use that attribute against my opponent. If I can, I do.
100%. And one of the questions I wanted to ask you was back in 2010, just a few years ago, you were scheduled to fight Anthony Johnson, right, at the UFC Live, Vera versus Jones. Um, and Anthony Johnson, I feel like is a very well known name to this day. Rest in peace. To
Rest in
to
peace.
him,
Yes.
was that a fight when he got hurt and you had to face the replacement? Was that a fight that you looked to try to reschedule, and you wanted to kind of run that back? Or I guess take me through your mindset when that happened, kind of where you were at.
No, so when that happened, I was just like, it was surprising. Rest in peace to Anthony Johnson. And the excuse he used at the time, I was just surprised. I thought he was still took the fight. Do I think it was smart on his end? Yes, because the injury he had, he torn his meniscus. And I never forget the interview. What happened is he told the interviewer, "Hey, listen, I'm not fighting John Hall." I was like, "Wow, you're tough." He's like, "I tore my left meniscus." He was like, "So they're like, listen, John Howard has one of the best kicks in the UFC. If I stand in front of him and he kicks me just right, he's gonna break my leg." So, and honestly, he's right. At that time, he was right because that was my whole game. My whole game plan was chop him down. So because of that, he made a smart decision, and I respect him for that because if it was vice versa, I would do the same thing. Now, when my opponent got changed, it's not that I was necessarily like overwhelmed, like oh my goodness. I just at that time I had enough experience to know that might happen, and that's why I train in a well rounded game. right? And the way I train from now on, I always train for my opponent, but at that time, I knew to train for my opponent and train for other possibilities. So, like, let's say on the training week, 5 days a week, 4 of those days, actually 6 days, sorry, 4 of those days are Pacific. Then 2 of those days are just random, just in case. Let's just train
Hmm.
jiu-jitsu, or do you be jiu-jitsu fighter, or you just be pure striker today? Because you never know, because it changes on the whim. It happened to me again. I was supposed to fight somebody, and I ended up fighting Matt Brown. Um, and
Hmm.
then that's Matt Brown. And we had a fight. We fought to the decision. He won, but yeah, like to get that change was like, oh my goodness, I got to fight Matt Brown. Like, all right, here we go. But I was able to adjust well enough. But even in that situation with that adjustment, it was crazy because what he did speaks volumes. And then I had to adjust to that and be careful. And he won the decision, but I'm glad I was able to take him the decision because a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned jujitsu, and you have a black belt in jujitsu, right?
Yes,
So was
third
that
degree.
something that you exactly, right? Was that something that you seeked? Did you want to do jujitsu, or did something just kind of lead you that way, where you kind of mentored to go jujitsu style? I guess kind of take us through that decision to go in that route.
But let me tell you a little secret, guys, and y'all gonna laugh about this. If you look at my old school MMA record, I was a jiu-jitsu fighter. I was never a striker. Like, I became a striker later on. I just became not good at knocking people out. But people forget I have 7 submissions on my MMA record and 7 different submissions. So
Yeah.
yeah, what happened is like the secret of John Doomsday Howard was like I had this jiu-jitsu but never used it. All right. So what it was is
Mm,
like even though I was knocking people out and it was actually easier, I always had the jiu-jitsu back in my pocket, and I prefer, believe it or not, I prefer to have even an MMA fight. I prefer to have a ground fight versus striking. Now, do I love striking? Yes, because it's easier. I hit hard. I was still developing at my time, but when I developed my knockout power and I knew I could knock people out, then John Doomsday Howard, the knockout artist, became to be. So what
mhm.
people don't understand is like I was always well-rounded and always training every different thing from judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, sambo, all different grappling styles. I was training. I just never mentioned it. What it was is what got me popular was knocking people out. So that took off for me. So like I always had the jiu-jitsu back in my back pocket. But right now, as we stand, I have 7 submissions and 10 knockouts.
Oh
So
yeah.
Yes, sir.
So you had 7 fights in the UFC after fighting Hall coming back. Something I
yep.
want to talk to you about, just get like perspective when you're in that grind of being in the UFC for that long. Like, what is the training regimen like? Like, what's your diet like? What is your like the discipline that has to go into that? Just keep yourself in shape like you have to be, and keep yourself motivated and just ready to fight at any given time. Like, talk to me about that. What your daily routine was.
My daily routine was to wake up. I'm not an early morning trainer. I didn't do that till later on when I got a little older. But I used to wake up like around midday, maybe 9 a.m., 10 a.m. Wake up, have a little breakfast, and start my training day at 12. And then from 12 o'clock, I ended training sometimes at 5, 6. I'll like to get from 6 to 8 hours of training. It was every day. It's a lifestyle. Training wasn't just only to train for a fight. It was literally my job. If I wasn't training, I was teaching. If I was a teacher, I was training. If I wanted to do them both, I was in the gym. I was just there. It was just every day being there and just being a life. People think it's just you just train for a fight and that's it. No, this is a lifestyle. This is everything. Even things I don't want to be there. Even times where I had no reason to be there. I had no reason to fight. Even right now, I have no scheduled fight, but I'm still training. I'm still
Right.
there.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle. It's funny. I got people right now. Right now, I'm walking around like 195, and people ask me, "You get ready to fight?" No, this is just in case. It's just you get into this mindset where because you did for every day and all your life. I didn't train just to fight. I trained because that was my life and that was my being. That's who I was. It was in me. And even though that I have nothing scheduled right now, and I don't know if I'm gonna go back to the UFC or PFL. I don't know what's gonna happen. I still train just because that was a lifestyle. So it was an everything thing, getting up, training, sometimes purposely traveling to different places. I have a vacation training. I'll travel to Thailand, go to Brazil, went to Paris one time. I
Hmm.
travel. It was just like every single day. Then to get up and push my body to its limit that day, okay, and try to do it every chance I get.
So was that something like was making weight ever stressful? Right? Because I just saw a video of a female UFC fighter, and she had one of her someone on her crew cut her ponytail off, and
Yeah, I
just
saw
so
that
she could
too.
walk up. Yeah, so she walked up with her ponytail in her hand just to make weight, and then she cried on stage, right? So I'm like, God damn. I mean, that must be stressful sometimes, right? Especially if you don't, certain days, your diet might change, but you got to be
Yeah,
strict, right? You said it's like 6 to 7, sometimes 8 weeks. You have to have a
you
strict
gotta be
diet.
on point, and especially for females, because what happens when people get their menstrual cycle or their period, that fluctuates with their weight, how they bloat it, and that's really hard to do. So it's hard for them. And respect to her, to cut your hair. Props.
It's crazy,
Props.
right?
She's not the first one to do it, but it's still to see a female do it. She has nice long hair. To cut it, that shows the dedication. Um, but yeah, making weight, all that. Honestly, in my opinion, making weight was the hardest part about fighting. Fighting is the easy part. Is making the weight, preparing for it. I like the old school way of making the weight and pushing yourself because, right, sometimes when I cut weight, I used to cut 10 to 13 pounds in a day. And that
Damn.
sucks.
That's in a day?
That's not a good day in the day,
That's tough.
right? Sometimes more, just depending on what I'm fighting. But the reason why I used to do that is I used to tell myself, if I can make this cut and make this weight, what is the fight? What I'm saying? Because what it is, people understand cutting weight, it's way harder than a fight. Getting up and fighting, getting trained, being in shape, just going to easy. But we gotta be disciplined. We gotta be eat a diet. And you can't eat what you want, and you gotta watch what you eat, how many calories you eat. That process sucks. But if you could get through that process, for me anyway, that helped me to get over the anxiety of fighting. Because I told myself, if I can make this weight, say sometimes you tell myself, I make this weight, if I can cut this 13 pounds in one day, I could beat this motherfucker. And I used to do that. And trust me, you'll see it sometimes when I weigh in and I cut like 13 pounds. I look at my opponent, oh, you messed up because I did something way harder that I know is gonna be in this fight. And in my mindset, I say all the time, cutting weight is harder than fighting. Because let me tell you something, people understand, just as much as hard as to take their weight off is just as hard to put it back on. People put on 20, 13 pounds in a day. And people think that's luxury. No, that sucks. That's not fun. The first 3, 4 pounds, awesome. You get to eat what you want, kind of, put everything. But the other 10, no, it's a science process. You're gonna eat every 2 hours. You can eat the right thing. You can eat the right fats, the right sauce, and everything. It's not like everything you see for everything you eat. It's just the way how disciplined you was to make the weight. You have to be just as disciplined to put it on because you see it in certain fights. People put on too much weight or they do it the wrong way and they're slower. Don't have the breath right. They lose too much sugar and all this, and they have complications. So just as hard it is to take it off, it's just as hard to put it on. You want to put the weight back on, but you want to do it smartly. You want me to do to put the weight on and to perform as a high performance athlete.
Something I want to ask, what is like you have a big fight night, you get a win, like the emotion, the excitement out of everything that you worked for to that point, and you get a win. Like, what is that night like for John Doomsday Howard? Like, how are you celebrating that?
Um, it's weird. It's weird. There's certain nights where you go to the club, you're exciting, you can't believe it. It's like yes, you see your family, you see your friends, All right, then there's other victories. You just want to go Subway and have a sandwich. That's the best way. It's weird. I when I beat Uriah Hall in Boston, man, that was awesome, man. I went to the club. I celebrated, saw all my family. It was a great night. I don't think I went to sleep because I couldn't believe it. It was awesome. Then when I beat Cahal Pendrick in Vegas, all I want to do is go to Subway, and that's what I did. So it depends. It's weird, man. On an average win, I'll say be with family, celebrate, have some fun, maybe a few drinks. But just sometimes, man, you just relieved to do that, and you just right, and you're so tired, and you don't have the energy to really express and celebrate. You just want to do something simple. So it depends. For the most part, yes, you want to have fun, but sometimes you just want to chill and go to sleep. For me, if I can control it, I have good energy. I like to party. I like to have it, but if it's not that, if it's not a party, I don't mind just going and having a sandwich, and smoke my little stuff and be good.
So since your time in the UFC, you have spent time in the World Series of Fighting and the Professional Fighters League. Tell me, is there anything looking back on your career, and I'm not saying your career is over by any means. I'm just saying looking back, is there anything that you wish you could have changed?
Honestly, to tell you the truth, the one thing I wish I could change in my career is I wish I was more selfish. I would keep my career. I was more selfish. I was too much lean. I had too much of a team mentality and not a selfish mentality. When you play for the NFL sport, like the NFL sport, when you play for like a major league sport, whatever, you have this team mentality. It's not you, it's your team. Your team has to do this, all this. I brought that same attitude to MMA, where it's your team, your trainer, and yes, you should definitely always think your team. You should always be appreciative and you always give them up. But when you're in that cage, you're by yourself and it's about you. And I wish I had a better understanding of that and it's been a lot more selfish because I was a lot more selfish. A lot of things wouldn't have happened and I would have made better decisions because I was treating more as it wasn't me in there. It was the team in there. And then when I realized for a lot of the time, especially when I lost, it was just me in there. So that was a hard lesson to learn. But everything else, no, I enjoyed my career. Shout out to World Series of Fighting, PFL, everything, especially PFL. I gotta give them a shout out because they made something come true. I couldn't believe it how they did it. They put it off. They don't do it no more. But I was one of the original guys who fought twice in one night. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm one of those old school guys, and PFL did that for me. And telling you something, it's not easy, but fighting twice in one night is humbling. It's it gives you a type of confidence where any fight I have in the future, I'm not worried about because I know if I need to, I could bang twice. And trust me, that was it wasn't easy. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't easy. But I really really appreciate that. I really do.
That endurance is just wild to think about. Another thing I want to
Oh yeah,
ask, how much of a shit talker were you in UFC? Did you find your time ever really getting into it with anybody? You said you made some comments with Uriah, but nothing, you said you were boys. It was just
yeah.
respectable, shit talking. But did you find yourself ever really like getting into it? We see these press conferences sometimes at the UFC getting wild. We don't really know how much of it is real and how much of it is for publicity. Did you ever experience anything like that in your career?
Yes. Rest in peace once again, Anthony Johnson. Me and Anthony Johnson, we have real beef, like real beef. Um, Me and Anthony Johnson was so real that one day in the UFC we bumped each other in the back room. We almost fought right then and there. It was bad, and the reason why, because at that time Anthony Johnson called me a cotton picker. Now, where I come from, when someone calls you a cotton picker, right, that's the equivalent of a man who's non-black calling you a nigger. And because of that, it got really personal because I told y'all, I said, hey, listen, I know you're trying to promote the fight, but what you said, that you don't say stuff like that. And because he said that, called me comic, it got real bad to the point where we couldn't be in the same room together. Anytime there was conference in the UFC, that we would always watch. They always make sure it was separate. It was bad. And then years later on, before he died, we squashed it. There's a picture of us online, us hugging and talking and getting over it. But that's the only really time that I was shit talking to me real. Everything at that time when that beat was happening, oh, it was real. It was personal. Like it was to the point where, and once again, rest in peace, Anthony Johnson. But we had that beef. It was real. Like right there and there, we could have seen each other on the street and we've been on. That's the really only time in the UFC I really have serious beef. Everybody else was just like promotional stuff. It wasn't really real. I mean, you say you're gonna say, "Hey, I think this, I think that," but when it got something that got real personal, almost like Rashad and Rampage, like something like that. Well, what Rampage and Rashad went through, that little crazy beef and how the stuff they were saying, that was me and Anthony Johnson at one point. It was real. To the point where UFC like, hey, don't leave this to a room. Like I caught Johnson in a room one day and I stepped him. I blocked the door. I was like, right now, let's go. I didn't care. Okay, and they stopped us. It was bad, but we squashed it eventually. But that's the only time it got crazy.
Just got a couple more questions for you, John. Once again, this has
Go
been a
for it.
pleasure. Appreciate you joining us. It's just been awesome. What are your thoughts on the UFC today? And do you ever take, like, obviously, from when you started in the UFC to what we see now, it's a whole different animal. What Dana White has done, like you said, the businessman that he has done, the businessman that he is, what he has turned the UFC into, unbelievable. What are your thoughts on the UFC as a whole today?
UFC as a whole today, from the business standpoint and from a fan standpoint and what the sport comes from, awesome. I say awesome because the sport wasn't near as big as it is today. It wasn't near as popular. We wasn't doing like Netflix specials. We wasn't like Hall of Fame and all that stuff. Like what it is today was crazy because when I was in the UFC, it was like nobody really did MMA, and it wasn't that serious. You had a few people here and there, but for what it is now, from the fans' perspective, and how accessible and how you can see it, great, awesome. I love it. I love that our sport got exposure. The business side of it, that's what I feel. I don't. I feel some type of way about it because I feel a lot of stuff that used to go on in my day still goes on in the UFC, and it shouldn't be. A lot of stuff how some of these fighters get screwed and stuff. Some things that happen, it shouldn't be. We should be better than that because we have a situation where it's so mainstream. There's no sense to screw with a fighter. Pay the fighter what they're worth, getting what they're worth. Y'all getting the money. Y'all basically a billionaire company. Okay, and it's like since y'all a billionaire company, you're making these millions and billions off of us. Pay your fighters better. This sport for some of us don't have longevity. It can be really brutal. I mean, you see guys with just training for this stuff is crazy, serious injuries, and oh man, and you seeing it now. Guys are even retiring and walking around. All the stuff they put through, years and years of cutting weight and stuff like that, and the money they made is crazy. Half these guys in the sport, they even clear $1 million working for the UFC, and I feel as big as the UFC is, a few guys get to clear $1 million, but I think every UFC fighter should be in that range. If not $1 million, at least 500 grand per year. Every one of them should be getting that because I'm sorry, we're mainstream, and right now we're like the most watched sport of all the sports. We're the most. I feel like we're the most watched. I'm not taking it to everybody else. I love my basketball. I love my football. I love my every other sport. But for what we come from and what we do and what we have to sacrifice, we sacrifice a lot more than any other sportsman out there. I'm sorry, the injuries, the training, the risk, and then we get paid a quarter of some of these athletes made. We should be getting paid a lot more. Not because no, not to be like to be greedy, just to live, just be okay. A lot of us has family, we have kids, retirement plan. I don't want to just be a lot of these guys are just fighting just to make it ends meet and live a little bit. No. We should be able to fight, make ends meet, and have retirement money. Half these guys don't have retirement plan. Half these guys after the UFC will have to go back to work. I feel after the UFC or after your fighting career, if you want to go back to work, yeah, but you shouldn't have to. A lot of these guys have to go back to work, and that's a shame. right? Because it's not like some one guy who got in the UFC once and got kicked out. I'm talking about guys who's been there and put some serious time in and got nothing to show for it.
For sure. And they have to live, some of them have to live the rest of their lives with injuries. I mean, we see the same thing in football, like people with brain injuries, and you're not the same person if you can't if you can't work. You should be compensated for that. Like the UFC should be taking care of you because you can't take care of yourself at that point. So they should have your back. So that is a shame. But one thing I did want to say is you should take tremendous honor in seeing what the UFC is now because you were one of those guys who helped lay the groundwork for it. So something I want to point out. So John, we recently just dropped the episode. We did the top 15 athletes of the 21st century. We were talking about it. I had a UFC name on my list. I want to know who is your GOAT? Who is your greatest of all time to fight in the UFC?
Ooh, greatest of all time. This is gonna be controversial. Now I know I'm gonna get backlash, but I have to tell the truth. John Jones. John Jones is the greatest of all time. He has the most championship. I don't think he lost, but he only has a loss on his record, and it's not a real loss. It's a DQ, which it should exit. In my head, I think he's undefeated. But I'll say him. Love him or hate him. When it comes to fighting, he is the best. The people he's beaten, how he's beating them from an age and going from one weight class to another. I would say him, man. The stuff he did is incredible, man. If all his victories and all his opponents that put him in front of him, he's beaten everyone. I think no one's compared to some of these new age fighters. I mean, I'm good for them, I'm glad for them and everything, but and they're doing great things, but they don't have real numbers. They don't have real history. They might get like 5 championships, 4 championships, and call all that he's a powerful, one of the greatest. How? When you got John Jones having 16, 17 freaking championships, half these guys don't even have a quarter of that. Give me a break with that. I really think he did it. He's a greatest of all time because when he did it, and I know him personally too. And then when he got into the UFC, into what he is now, and the stuff he went through, I mean, he has his trials and tribulations. I definitely don't agree the stuff he's doing. He should be a better man. I would say that. But as a professional athlete and as a fighter, yeah, he is the greatest pound for pound. Ain't no one messing with that man.
100%, and that was who I had on my list. So I'm glad we agree on that. Just absolute freak of nature. When watching that guy fight, it was fun to watch, and it's been a shame. I think the number was he's fought 2 fights in the last 4.5 years. So it just sucks for all of us. Like we don't get to watch this, and it's affecting his legacy along the way too. Like the legacy that he could be leaving on the sport. Like there would be no controversy. We wouldn't have to say, yo, this might be controversial, but like, no, if he was consistently fighting, there wouldn't even be a conversation. Like it's over. Like he's that dominant.
Yeah, 100%. He's out dominant, bro. The stuff he did, and people did, and it's not only the people beat, it's the way he beat him, dude. He choked out Machida. I didn't think that was gonna happen. Put him to sleep. Machida was like a second or third degree black belt when that happened. John Jones was like a purple belt and put him to sleep. That's insane. He took, dude. He took Rampage's back. The only person to take Rampage's back and choke him out is Sakuraba. Like, people understand the skill level and the skill level. This man's not even a black belt. He's not even completed as how can I say this? He's not even completed in all his training yet. He's still learning and developing. So it's amazing, and for what he learned and what he did, for what he had. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. There's no way, bro. I don't understand with people that should be controversial. It is, but yeah, he's amazing. Now, on a personal level, the stuff he does, no, I don't agree with. No, no.
Yeah, it's hard to, but just
Yeah,
athletic standpoint, and I mean, GOAT of UFC for sure.
Yeah.
Doomsday, this has been an absolute pleasure. We are so honored to have you, to have talked about you, go through your story. What are you up to now? What are we up to now?
Right now, man, I'm working. I got to pay some bills, kitchen bills. I got to take care of my daughter, man. For people who don't know, I had a child. I had two kids actually. My son too. They were shot. My son was shot in the foot, and my daughter was shot in the head. And she survived it. It was really close. I'm glad she's still here. Really hard. It's that's nothing easy. I wish that nobody. To anybody who has a kids, love your kids every day because you never know something tragic could happen and that could change everything. So if you have them, they're healthy. Appreciate that because, woof. That being said, as of right now, I'm working and I'm not done fighting. A lot of people been asking me like when I'm coming back, and I'm not really. I don't want to say when I'm coming back, because I'm still in training. That's why I'm still in shape. But I'm thinking within next year, you'll hear something. I'm talking to people. I'm talking to leagues and stuff like that. Right now, I have to take care of my family. I gotta make sure she's okay, make sure everything's and help and set that situation. It's not an easy situation, but once that's okay, my family's back to where it needs to be, or at least a better, stable situation that I could come back to the career and finish it. I'm 41 right now, guys. I tell the guys, I believe I got 2 to 3 more years left. I hit up Randy Couture. I asked him what should I do because he's a legend. He was like Captain America. He was like, dude, you was fighting in your 40s. Dude, how do you do it? He just told me keep going, bro. He told me don't care what anybody says. He's like everybody told me, oh man, I couldn't do it. Look what I did. He said keep going. Don't even care. So that's what we're doing. I still want to fight. I still have the body. I still have the passion. I still have the means to do it. So I'm gonna do it. Once I get my life a little more stable and make sure my family's better, you'll see Doomsday back, and then you'll see me make noise again.
Looking forward to it. Hey, remember, it's not impossible. It's only improbable. But we are
Exactly.
wishing you and your family the very best. John Doomsday Howard, God bless. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Once again, want to thank John Doomsday Howard for joining the New Score podcast. Howard, that was an absolute blast. I know your audio just unfortunately cut out.
I would have enjoyed being a part of the last 15 to 20 minutes of that, but I did enjoy the first 40. Don't get me wrong. So thank you, John. If you're hearing this later on, I apologize. I wasn't just staring into fucking blank space. I really had some technical difficulties, so my bad. But thank you again, brother. I appreciate you. Great dude, by the way. Great guy.
For sure. For sure. Some great conversations. That is it, though. Episode 33 of the New Score podcast. If you're on YouTube right now, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Get at us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. We will see you next time. Goodbye.
Peace.
When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore. Money kissing each other like a rock and roll tour. When I come to your city, I'm a new score. Broke your high score soon as I step through the door. Tryna stack my paper up like a bookstore.